Hey handsome, wanna join us for a drink? I turned my head to see a sexy girl dressed in a short red dress asking me this. I looked over to Frank's side and he was busy flirting with ladies. One of these days I'm going to kill this bastard. He dragged me to this bar when I was comfortably using Snapchat, sharing snaps and watching stories. She waved her hand in front of my face and I agreed to go out with her. I followed her to a table where two other girls were sitting. One of them was drinking, while the other one with tomboy attire looked a little bit uncomfortable in this environment. I guess it was her first time being in a place like this. They started asking me questions one by one about my dating life and about my normal life, hobbies, etc., which I started answering one by one. The other two who were asking me questions did not pique my interest one bit. Instead, I was more attracted to the silent tomboy girl. I wanted her to ask me something, but she was silent the entire time. I was already awkward enough between these two, but then Frank suddenly tapped me from behind and asked me if he could join these ladies. They agreed and Frank started flirting with them, which they by the way enjoyed and participated equally too. First time being here, I raised my head when I heard her speak for the first time. Yes, what about you? I asked in response. Me too, I don't like coming to such places. Carla dragged me here today because it's my birthday, she said in a soft voice. Oh, happy birthday, I said, and she smiled in response. We've kept small talk the rest of our time there and ended up exchanging our Snapchat IDs with each other. Frank and the other two girls were nowhere to be seen, so we decided to give them a call because it was getting late. Maria sent me the text that those three are together and if I wanted I can leave for home. She pulled my shirt to get my attention and informed me. I offered to drop her home, which she agreed to and followed me to my car. After dropping her home, I realized that I never asked her what her name was, and I remember that we'd exchanged each other's Snapchat IDs. I thought I'd text her after reaching home and started driving to my apartment. That was when Frank called and started asking me in a pissed voice, why did I leave without him? You were the one who left me to goof around with those girls, don't blame me for leaving. I said angrily and disconnected the call. Honestly, I was pissed that if it wasn't for the tomboy girl, I would have been getting bored all alone there. After reaching home, I searched for her Snapchat ID and texted her, which she immediately replied to. I asked her name saying that I forgot to ask her earlier and she told me that her name was Millie. We started talking and sharing snaps of our daily lives with each other, and as I got to know her, I realized that she was a more down-to-earth type girl and I started to like her. One day we were exchanging snaps. She shared with me a snap of a bleeding leg. I got freaked out thinking that it was her leg and asked her what was going on. She told me that she was working as a nurse in a hospital and shared with me the snap of what was going on in front of her. It was a bit weird, but I thought, okay, she shared with me her daily life routine, and it must be one of those things that's just going on in her day. But another day, as we were having an amazing conversation and snap exchanges, she shared with me the snap of the bleeding tooth of a person while saying that she's working again. I sent some laughing emojis and said that it was a bit creepy and she gave me a weird reply. Isn't it? I thought if she knew these are creepy, then why in the world would she send these to me? Frank called that night and told me that he was going on a date with one of the girls from the bar. I'd already made up with Frank a day later to the bar incident after he called and apologized to me. And besides, he was one of those dearest friends and my only best friend, so there was no way that I could stay mad at him any longer. I wished him luck and opened my PS4 to play some games. As I was playing, I got a notification from Snapchat that she had shared a snap with me. I'd already figured out that it was her work time and she must be sending me those weird snaps of her patients, so I didn't even check it. When I was done playing, I went to the living room and started switching channels when a news channel pulled up my attention. It was showing that the bar we went to the last night had a nasty fight and two guys ended up getting stabbed and are admitted to the hospital. They were on dates with two girls, and their ex-boyfriends who were part of some gang or something showed up and started causing a ruckus. It got out of control and pulled out weapons, and the other two poor guys got hurt. This is why I don't like places like that. That's what I thought and took out my phone. I opened up Snapchat just to see what sort of snaps she had sent me this time. When I did, I was shocked by what I saw. It was Frank and Chase, our friend, lying unconscious on a stretcher, bleeding. There's a text below that said, "Isn't that your friend? Come quickly to the hospital." There was the address of the hospital below the text. I immediately grabbed my jacket and headed over to the hospital. I know that she's a weirdo, but I shouldn't have ignored her text.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. These days, when people talk about dating, they don't think about direct interaction to find a partner because dating sites have taken that place instead. These days, people install dating apps to find suitable partners for them, but sometimes these dating apps become the reason for some people's misery. I don't trust them either because of the incident that happened to me a year ago. Just like everyone else, I also wanted to date someone, so I installed the Bumble app and created an account for myself. It was the time when I had a recent heartbreak by the girl I trusted and loved the most, Erica. She was my first love and best friend, but she had an affair with my childhood friend Carl, so I decided to let them be and date someone else, hence the dating app Bumble. Anyway, after installing Bumble and creating my profile over it, I finally got matched with a blonde girl whose name was Minnie. We started chatting, and after a few days of talking with her, we became comfortable with each other. She seemed kind and down to earth, which were rather nice qualities that are rare to find these days. Slowly, she started sharing her day-to-day routines with me, and I opened up to her as well. I never mentioned meeting up with her because I had gotten out of a relationship not long ago and did not want to rush things. One day, Minnie asked herself if I wanted to meet with her and go to a movie and dinner date, which I immediately agreed to because our meeting had stretched way too long. We planned to meet on Saturday night, and the place was chosen by her. It did not matter either way. All that mattered was our date. And surprisingly, I was looking forward to our Saturday date. Although it had been only a few days since I started talking to her, I came to know much about her. She was from Chicago and was working here as an assistant designer in some startup company, and she used to spend half of her earnings on charity, etc. Anyway, the weekdays went by and it was finally Saturday. I patiently waited for the evening while doing house chores, cooking, etc. And the moment clock struck 6, I got ready and headed outside the house. This is when I realized that she hadn't told me the address yet, so I texted her asking for the address. In the meantime, I drove to the gas station to fill up the car. Her response came after about 20 minutes, and instead of sending me an address, she shared a live location with me, saying she was already there. I did feel weird about this, and then I ignored it, thinking she might be telling the truth. I reached the location within half an hour and parked my car and then stepped out of it. Surprisingly, the building looked quite old, and it seemed there was no one around in the area. The feeling of unease started to build up in my guts as I walked by, and at that moment, I got a jump scare from the sound of my notification bell. I checked, and it was Minnie. She was asking me to come to the 7th floor of the building. I walked near the elevator, and as expected, it wasn't working, so I took the stairs. At this juncture, I could not understand why I was doing this, despite having apprehensive feelings. Nonetheless, it all could be just my imagination, so I continued climbing the stairs until I finally reached the 7th floor. The moment I stepped my foot on the floor, my eyes landed on this drop-dead beautiful girl standing there, who noticed me and smiled at me. Along with this exhilarating feeling, I thought that maybe coming here was worth it after all. "So, where are we supposed to watch the movie?" I asked, walking toward her. But instead of replying, she kept giving me a lifeless stare. I could not shake off this unsettling feeling that I was getting from that, but once again, I decided to engage her in a conversation. "It's freezing over here and I'm starving, so how about we eat something first?" Even I could feel the nervousness in my shaky voice. She held my hand and walked near the terrace. I was too perplexed to let a word out and kept staring in her direction. We stopped at the edge, and she brushed my face and pointed in a direction. I turned my head, and the view was so amazing that I got mesmerized for a second. That was when my notification bell rang again. I took out my phone and checked. It was from Minnie. I looked over in the direction of the girl, and she wasn't holding any phone. Feeling horrified, I checked the message, and it said, "Sorry, Pedro, I can't make it today, and I promised that I would make it up for this tomorrow." I scrolled over, and the messages of the live location and the other one were gone, as if they had never been sent in the first place. 54. I turned my head while shaking like a leaf when I heard her whispering voice, and the moment I looked at her face and realized what was going on, I was too petrified to run at this point. That was when I felt a push and I was screaming. My body was falling down the building. I felt my head hitting the ground and everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital and realized that I was on a life support system. My entire body was covered in bandages and I could not move either. I had no idea how I survived falling from the 7th floor, but I felt lucky that I did. Erica and Carl rushed into the room looking distressed and started apologizing to me. They were thinking that I tried to commit suicide because of them. I could not speak, so there was no option for me to tell them that they were wrong, but it was rather nice that they were feeling guilty of what they did. Anyway, I was told that I was found by some construction worker half dead and unconscious. The guy thought I was already dead, so he called 911, but it turned out that I was still breathing and they admitted me to an emergency room. I had been in a state of coma for the past 6 months, and just when doctors lost all hope of me waking up, I did. I'm still in the hospital and cannot move, but I can speak now. One thing that I had decided that no matter what happens, and it doesn't matter if I die single, I would never use Bumble or any dating app ever again. I met a guy online back in August of last year. We immediately hit it off. I was reluctant to get into a relationship though, as I had been cheated on a few months prior and lied to the entire relationship. Catching feelings for anyone again scared the life out of me. But this guy was so sweet and nice that I trusted him and was willing to risk it for him. Skip to mid-September. We both admitted feelings for each other, and a while before this, but he was reluctant to ask me out. I wasn't sure why, but I figured he was just waiting for the right moment, which he was, because he slipped that his birthday was coming up, and I pointed out how come he's turning 19 and still in high school. Then he said that he isn't 19, he's 17, and he's turning 18 in a few days. This made me mad though. We've never actually been intimate. I'm 18, and I don't like being lied to. We both met in a place that's only for 18 plus people. He pointed out that I never directly asked him his age. I just assumed because of where we met. Despite this, when he turned 18 and asked me out, I said yes. We lasted less than a month. He would start fights every single day over the dumbest stuff. If I took over 10 minutes to reply, he would get mad at me and told me I needed to tell him when I was going to do stuff. So he wasn't waiting for my message. He got mad, and I had been in relationships before him, despite none of them turning out good. So I broke up with him. I thought maybe in the future things would stop, because this is his first relationship and he was just unexperienced. I told him multiple times calmly that things need to change, and once the fight stopped, we can try again. But they never stopped for more than a few days. One time he lied to me, saying some girl had been flirting with him and asking if he was single or taken, just so I confirm a relationship, which I didn't because we weren't dating anymore, and he got mad. I pointed out it was obviously a lie, but he insisted happened. Only later that evening did he admit that it was a lie. Eventually, I shut off my Snapchat map because I didn't want him knowing where specifically I lived, and he got mad that I didn't trust him. One of my best IRL friends messaged me asking why he was requesting to follow her. I checked his Instagram, and he had started following everyone who was following me. I told him to unfollow them because he doesn't even know any of them. And it's kind of weird. He got mad, but he did unfollow them. 2 weeks ago, I woke up one morning and he told me we need to talk. He asked me why I've been lying to him, why I've been hiding things behind his back. I asked him what he was talking about because I never lied to him nor hid anything from him. He said he has been messaging all of my friends on Instagram asking for information about me, who I've dated, who I've been doing, etc. He asked me why I've been FaceTiming people behind his back, not telling him everything about my past relationships, etc. How to know if I was more shocked to the fact that he did this, or than the fact that those people were actually giving him information about me. I never did anything behind his back though. And the only person I ever FaceTimed me first randomly and for 30 minutes just to play 8-ball and iMessage. He even mentioned talking to people who I haven't talked to in months. He also made alternate accounts, befriending people from my past, voice chatting with them, playing games with them, all just to get info from them about me once they opened up. He even mentioned that my ex had messaged me, which I never told anyone, so I had no idea how he found that out. My Snapchat kept logging me out, so I think he hacked into my Snapchat to read my conversations with people. He found my old Reddit and went back 2 years of common history to get mad at stuff I've said in the past. When I asked him how he found out about my one ex contacting me, he said, "You don't deserve to know," before proceeding to block me on everything. The day after, he emailed me saying that there's nothing left to say, we're just acquaintances now, etc., etc. I told him now, and we aren't even acquaintances anymore. He's just some crazy dude I dated, and it's his loss in the end, because he caused this by doing detective work, as he liked to put it. He said he did all this, and he was curious, not that he didn't trust me, and he found lots of stuff he didn't want to. I guess about my past relationships, because that's all he ever mentioned. His little tangent went on for quite a while saying he's my loss and he could have made me happy and blah blah. I told him he never could have made me happy. His money, which wasn't much, maybe, but not him. As a person, not since the first fight started. Two summers ago, I met a girl on that dating app Bumble. I previously tried my hand at Tinder and Plenty of Fish, but I found that anyone I'd reached out to or matched with was less than reluctant to take our conversations offline. That's when I heard about Bumble. Now, for those of you that don't know, Bumble is the dating app where women make the first move. I'm guessing that makes them feel more comfortable and in control of any particular correspondence. So I figured I'd increase the chances of finding someone that actually liked me enough to want to talk. At first, it proved to be no different than any other dating app. And I hate to break it to any guys thinking of trying it, but it's more than often the same old story of match and don't talk. However, like most things, persistence is key. And in the end, I ended up matching with a girl who seemed genuinely interested in me. I don't really want to use her name, so we'll just call her Danielle for the sake of ease. And given the embarrassing nature of the story, I won't be telling you much about me either. Danielle was really nice at first. We definitely were into the same sort of things, but that was fine. She had this infectious passion for things she was into, and that made me want to learn more. And of the things that she was into in a big way was Japanese anime. I don't think I'd watched the cartoons when South Park first came out, and I know it makes me sound a bit dull, but subtitled films just aren't my thing. But the thing that I did find compelling was some of the artwork. Like, I remember she was into a series called, and please forgive me if I get it wrong, Attack on Titan. From what I could gather was basically just a war between giants and regular humans, but the scale at which some of the art is drawn, it really makes for some compelling viewing. So me and Danielle went on a couple of dates, and after the fourth time, we'd met up for food. She asked me if I wanted to go back to her place. Of course I said yes, and within an hour or so, we were making out on her couch with some Netflix documentary providing a little background noise. Things got gradually steamier and steamier, until suddenly, she jumped up off the couch, excused herself, and then disappeared into the bedroom. I thought she might be going to get some rubber or something more on an oil change into something a bit comfier, but instead, she reappeared with her laptop under her arm, telling me she wanted to show me something. I had my suspicions about what it was, as she'd hinted at certain lewd interests of hers. Her choice of words, not me. But when she actually showed me, well, it was something else. They were all pictures drawn in that same anime art style, but they were all of the girls in states of semi-undress. Unusual. Yeah, but I'm not going to lie to you and say it wasn't unappealing. I mean, it was quite the opposite. It was magnetic. Some of the girls had a certain feline aesthetic to them, which both myself and Danielle found very attractive. She added that it was the exact aesthetic she wanted to replicate. It was just a case of finding the right guy to try it with. I think I must have blushed so hard that I had closely resembled a tomato. Because obviously the implications here was that this guy she wanted to try things with, that guy was me. I'd only ever had very vanilla relationships before then, so the prospect of trying something new was beyond exciting for me. Anyway, we continued to cuddle for a bit, and then when we were sufficiently pooped, she invited me to sleep in her bed with her for sleeps, nothing more, but I was okay with that. But then, at the risk of sounding a bit weird, we didn't exactly finish our little makeout session, if you catch my drift. So I was left with a rather distinct urge, the kind that if it went unanswered would end up in causing a distinctly blue kind of discomfort. And for those who have empathy and not just sympathy, I'm sure you know just how painful it can be. The last thing I wanted to do was wake Danielle up by doing that next to her sleeping body. So I quickly got up, went into her TV, and opened her laptop. I knew her password was just mince the name of the gerbil she had recently lost, so I plugged that in and found the folder with all the lewd pictures she showed me. It turned out that the collection she'd showcased just hours before had been but the tip of the iceberg. Danielle must have saved literally thousands of those pictures, and it's sorted into a variety of subgenres, shall we call them. Some of them were definitely up my street, others not so much. And in the end, I found myself perusing the different kinds of material instead of focusing on the task at hand. It's then that I noticed that that particular folder seemed hidden within another. All of the folders tended to be called things that sounded like Japanese words, which I'm guessing were the codes or direct names for whatever they contained. But one was labeled with nothing but a few punctuation marks. And unlike the others, where a few preview images gave you an idea of what the folder contained, this one had nothing of the sort. At first, I was a bit reluctant to click on it. Then turned out to be the pictures of Danielle in a state of undress. I'd be mortified. Seeing something like that would feel like peeking behind the curtain when it wasn't the right time. Like I was pent up, but not that pent up. It's still, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided I'd double-click, take a peek, and if it was anything remotely human-looking, I'd just close the folder and move on. I was way more nervous than I should have been, but in the end, I double-clicked and took a peek from out the corner of my eye. What I see still doesn't contain any actual real human beings to my infinite relief, but instead, I saw things that gave me a whole new reason to wish I hadn't opened that mystery folder up to my initial relief. All I saw was more animated stuff, but on closer inspection, this stuff was much more different than the other things I'd seen. The first thing was a GIF in which a girl is going down on the guy. Pretty hard stuff. so I settled in to enjoy it, if you catch my meaning. Only the moment I get comfortable, the guy in the animation pulls out a gun of all things and puts it to the girl's forehead. I had no idea she was into this weird non-consensual stuff for being scared while being intimate, but it was honestly really shocking. But then it got so much worse. I actually gasped when the guy pulled the trigger, and the amount of cartoon gore that came out of the exit wound was absolutely horrific. Then, instead of ending the horrid little affair, the guy carries it on. He keeps, and God, I don't even know if this is the right word, but using her all I could do was watch an absolute horror as both he and the gift finished. And the whole thing began to loop again. A rush to close it before it could be, then I just leaned back into the couch, kind of shaken at what I had just seen. I've never been the squeamish type, so that wasn't really the issue. And neither am I a kind of prude. But can you blame me for reacting that way? I've never seen anything so horrendously violent in my entire life. But at the same time, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was literally mind-blowing that someone out there had put the time and effort into creating something so utterly repulsive. It was like walking past a car accident at the side of the road. And he knows you shouldn't look and you almost don't want to, but at the same time, you can't help yourself. The next thing I clicked on was a still image, but somehow it was even worse than the first I'd seen. It was like a before and after picture, and including the girl in some kind of restraining device similar to medieval stocks. Only instead of being held in that bent over way you'd imagine the girl was being held in, a way that her head and her hindquarters were protruding from the same side of the device. In the first picture, the girl was almost expressionless, no damage on her. The second picture, however, totally different. The girl is most definitely deceased. She's missing appendages, and most of the things that should be inside her are very much on display through various gashes and slashes. Again, the detail was absolutely painstaking. Someone must have put hours upon hours of work into such a thing, staring continuously at something that was literally nightmare-inducing. And there were thousands of those things. Some including things like giant insects or cannibalism, all tucked away in some nameless folder. Presumably, it was difficult to find things online, and that's why she had to save them to her hard drive, but there was definitely a moment when I figured she might be actually making them herself. So by that point, I'm thoroughly creeped out. I kind of want to confront Danielle on what I've seen, but at the same time, I know I'm being a bit judgmental. She had warned me that she was into some less than conventional things, and I'd found the idea of that to be attractive. But that weird, like ultra-violent level of weird, I don't know if I could handle that. I came to the conclusion that I bring it up to her at some point, make it clear that her more violent tastes weren't something that I shared. Then we could just sort of go on like I hadn't seen it. I mean, I used to play at GTA Vice City back in the day. I loved it too, but it didn't mean that I went on a mass murder cocaine dealer did. Besides, the last thing I wanted to come across as was some handcuffed clutching prude, and there was more to it than just artwork, because before it closed the folder and shut her laptop, I scrolled right to the bottom of the folder to take in just how much content was there. And that's when I saw another folder with a similar elite gibberish label. Inside was what I initially thought was more animation. Each file was a video, and since I can only see red lights and dark backdrop, I figured it'd be another disturbingly artistic depiction of an execution, or at least something to that effect. But as I opened up the video, I instantly realized that it wasn't any kind of animation. It was an execution that much I'd guessed correctly, but it was real. In fact, every single video in there depicted a murder or accidental death, the former being the heavy majority. Accompanying the video was a text file. One seemed to feature a commentary on each of the videos. I couldn't tell if Danielle was the author of it or not, but even then it made for some extremely disturbing reading. One tract of the text explained how the author actually envied one of the video's victims, adding having a look at post-mortem tranquility in their eyes was something they wanted to experience themselves. I don't even want to begin to unpack how wrong and disturbing of an idea that is. Not right now anyway. But what was even creepier were the strong central overtones that seemed to drift from this person's writing. They were getting off from what they were seeing. It was as simple as that. They weren't just getting off to the idea of dying either. They were getting off on the idea of being the one doing the killing too. I had to remind myself that finding this kind of material on anyone's computer would make for a horrendous discovery, but finding it in the same space as more suggested material, God, that made it extra terrifying in my mind. I gathered up my things, got dressed, went home. There I deleted all of Danielle's contact details, blocked her various accounts, binges, chunked the whole thing up as a loss. I have to admit to getting a little bit attached to her over the 5 or 6 weeks we were dating, and it really felt grim that I was severing all ties with her. But what else could I do? Start a relationship with someone who secretly harbored violent erotic fantasies, going to get married and have some kids with someone who was quite evidently excited by some of the most horrific images I've ever likely to see. I understand that someone isn't strictly neurotypical, as they say on Twitter these days, but I'm certainly not about to start a life with them or create life with them either. Not when they have a very distinct interest in snuffing it out.